Well, thank you, Nicholas. This is Natalie Stites. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you good.
Great. Welcome, everybody, to our talking circle number 3. Our topic today is data collection. Uh, I myself am facilitating the webinar today. My name is Natalie Stites. I am an enrolled member of the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe in South Dakota, and I am a technical assistance coordinator with the OJJDP Tribal Youth Training and Technical Assistance Center. Unfortunately, my colleague, Dr. Paulette Running-Wolf, was not available today. However, she remains an expert on our staff who is available to address your needs, particularly in the area of data collection. Our agenda today. The purpose of our talking circles is for grantees to share strategies, tools, and resources relevant to your strategic planning. As you know, a data collection plan is part of the required elements for your Strat Pack submission that is due to your program manager on or before August 30th, 2017. And please get in touch with your assigned technical assistance coordinator if you have any questions about where you're at in your planning. Today, our agenda is to go over some simple concepts around data collection to assist you as in your planning. We will review types of data collection, purposes of data collection, ethical and cultural considerations, which are very important in our tribal communities. We will also look at the template that was created by the center to assist you in your data collection plan submission. Also, we will review a checklist reminder for the strategic planning, and then we will wrap up, and hopefully each of you participating today will be able to submit an evaluation of our webinar. I'd also like to note that we will be recording this webinar to archive as a resource for our grantees, both current year and previous years. Additionally, by the design of the talking circle, we are going to open the mic up at various points in the presentation in order to hear from our grantees and people on the line in response to various discussion points. Also, if you cannot access your microphone, or if you prefer, please feel free to fill up our chat box throughout this presentation as questions come to your mind. First of all, we want to simply go through the types of data collection. One is qualitative, another is quantitative, and of course the most common way of collecting your data is through a mix of qualitative and quantitative data. And these you can get through interviews, stories, oral histories, focus groups, and observations. And quantitative goes to surveys and questionnaires and counts and so forth. So there are various tools through which you can solicit this type of data. We're going to go through 4 purposes of data collection in this discussion. One purpose is that collecting data provides the information you need to report on performance measures. Our discussion point, and you can submit in the chat box or feel free to join in on the microphone, is what is one of the performance measures in the planning year that your project needs to report on. Well, an example of a performance measure from the OJJDP is the number of partnerships developed during the reporting period. And this you would track through entrance into memorandums of agreement or MOUs of understanding with your partners for more formal partnerships. Also, any type of referral agreements, letters of support. There are various ways in which you can count the number of partnerships that you develop for your juvenile into wellness program or for your tribal youth program. Another purpose is that it helps to keep the project focused. What's a strategy for using data collection to help keep your project focused? The example that we offer is that uh, you can help keep it focused by collecting information on the ongoing and consistent program activities. And your data collection tool is a way to monitor that. So keeping your project focused can be one purpose of collecting your data, in addition to collecting the information you need to demonstrate meeting your performance measures through the OJJDP. A third purpose of our data collection, of data collection generally, is that it enhances your ability to monitor and evaluate your project. So what tools are you using now to monitor your project? An example that we might offer here is, paper and pencil records, like sign-in sheets, checklists, an online database, an in-house database, an Excel tool or spreadsheet, and any noted observations, and also documentation of staff meetings, minutes, and agendas. These are all different ways that you can use data collection to enhance your monitoring and your evaluation of your program. And if you are currently, for our participants on the line, if you're currently using any tools to monitor your project along these lines, please feel free to share them with the other grantees here on the web. And we'd love to hear from you about that as well. A fourth purpose is it provides the building blocks of project evaluation. So what type of project evaluation have you considered using for your project? Examples of this might be formative, process, outcome, or impact types of evaluation. And we'll go over those in the next couple slides. So the data collection effort is about building what you need, the information that you need to look at evaluating your project for both its successes and the challenges that it's gone through. And I'm using project and program interchangeably for all of our grantees. One type of evaluation is known as a formative evaluation. And what this does is it measures feasibility and appropriateness before fully implemented. And so this is, of course, a time certain evaluation type that would need to be structured in before you open your doors, so to speak, before full implementation of your proposed program. Another type of evaluation is a process evaluation. This is, as a former tribal program manager myself, this is the most familiar type of evaluation that I have participated in with different federal funding agencies. A process evaluation determines if the program activities have been implemented as intended. And so you attach to your goals and your activities and your strategies. You also make a column or space for what kind of tool are you going to use to measure your, not only your intention, but then your implementation of your activities. A third type of evaluation is outcome. An outcome type of evaluation measures effectiveness in the target population by assessing progress of objectives. And so objectives are the way in which you have proposed to meet your overall goals for your project. And so that's an easy measure, and coming up with tools to measure that outcome is one way to look at evaluating your project and collecting the data that is necessary. The fourth type is an impact evaluation, and this assesses your program effectiveness in achieving its ultimate goals. And thus some measurements that you might use in this type of evaluation. Is that one of my colleagues wanting to chime in? Okay. I think somebody just joined us, and that's great. Welcome. So the last type of evaluation that we're highlighting here is the impact evaluation. The impact evaluation, of course, goes to the ultimate goals. And so you look at measuring ultimate goals like reducing recidivism in your juvenile detention. Another ultimate goal would be, for example, lowering substance use or lowering the number of substance use offenses that are committed by juveniles in your community. And I'm going to go back to the previous slide here. So we're looking at 4 types: formative, process, outcome, and impact. And all can be important to evaluating your program and also helping you design the tools at the outset to collect the type of data you need in order to evaluate your program. So this is a discussion point where anyone on the microphones will be lifted, and you can feel free to chime in, or you can add in the chat box your answer to this question. What type of evaluation do you think would be appropriate for your project? For purposes of discussion, we're looking at formative, process, outcome, and impact.
Hello, Natalie. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, this is Courtney. How are you? Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Arholer. I am the program manager here at the OJJDP Tribal Youth TNTA Center, and I wanted to jump online today and thank you for the invite, and just kind of wanted to chime in here as our listeners are maybe giving some consideration and some thought into these types of evaluation that's been presented. We use these words such as evaluation, and we're talking about the different types of formative, process, outcome, and impact. I kind of wanted to bring it down to a very simplistic level in terms of evaluation, in terms of data, and just really think about it in terms of what is it. And what it is, it's observing. It's collecting information. It's collecting information that we can use to observe for these different types of observations, such as formative, process, outcome, and impact. And, doing a lot of work within Indian country, when we hear the word evaluation or assessment or those kinds of that kind of language, it can be sometimes offsetting. However, when we think about it in the global sense, our tribal communities have been doing this for years, for centuries, and it's nothing new. And really what it does is it helps us gather information so that we can make more informed decisions as we move forward. And so, when we look at it traditionally, our Indian people, planted different kinds of crops. They did different kind of harvests. Maybe they had different things that they hunted. Maybe they did different ceremonies during different seasons. They had a process for things, and the way that those developed over time, in addition to the gift and the blessing of it, but was also evaluation, observation. And so with that mindset, I'm hoping that helps us think about these different types of evaluation processes that Natalie has presented today, and helps think of it, what story are we telling, and what story do we want to tell? And so I just kind of wanted to mention that as we consider, what types of evaluation are most appropriate for your project. And it may be a combination of different kinds, or it may be one. So I'll pause right there, and Natalie, if you have anything to add, or if anybody else has anything to add, or any thoughts, I'll just leave it open.
Thank you very much, Courtney. Our program manager brings up a really important point, is simplifying this process into what can at times become complex or elaborate. But for our programming purposes, creating the tools that you need, the design and the type that you are looking at that will be helpful to your project to tell the story of your efforts to address tribal youth. And perhaps what we hope through this basic introduction is that we can help to address any type of fears or hesitancies or even say suspicion that data collection and evaluation can often present to us as members of tribal communities. Um, so here are some of those considerations that we just want to discuss and bring to your attention as you do your planning. You know, to determine those methods to collect or acquire the data that you're seeking. You need to make decisions around, using a sample of, say, your youth clients, a sample of your providers. How will they be selected, and how will the information you solicit from them be used? How can you identify or create your data collection instruments? That's another thing to consider. There are a number of packaged data collection instruments that are available on public sites and so forth that you may adapt to your own program. There are also other types of instruments that can be developed and adapted by your program. And so identifying those that will be helpful and that are a match for your goals and objectives. That's one thing to consider. How will these instruments be tested for readability, reliability, validity, and cultural appropriateness? And that's a big question that we will go into a little bit further here. And how will the quality and utility of existing data be determined? And that is, does your tribe have a set of, say, existing data information, such as the number of juveniles arrested, the number of cases adjudicated in the juvenile court? So how can you use that data to measure your own program success, known as existing data? And then from whom and from what will data be collected? What is your source of data? There are any number of data sources that can be used to tell your story. Federal, tribal, state sources, and also your own program sources of information. So what are some of the cultural considerations of data collection in American Indian communities and or in our tribal nations? The cultural considerations can be quite a concept to unpack, and the issues that are implicated not only in how you collect information and how do you ask for information, and then also how do you store information that is in a culturally appropriate and competent manner. Some questions should simply not be asked in your tribal communities, and that needs to be considered when designing your data collection plan. Now, do any of our participants today have any cultural considerations that they'd like to share with our group? If you do, please feel free to enter them into the chat box. And of course, you can also discuss this matter more in depth with your assigned technical assistance coordinator. And I see some of my grantees on our participant list. So I say hello, and we can talk about this more as we move forward in our planning. Some of the cultural and ethical considerations in regards to data collection, of course, are your tribal laws, your norms, values, and protocols with respect to collecting data and accessing data. Of course, paramount is human protection and rights. There are a number of high-profile cases of information being collected, particularly biological or physiological information, blood samples that have been collected by universities or other institutions from our communities without any input or respect for the laws and norms of those communities. So Wallapai case in Arizona stands out to me. I have a background in law, and that was definitely a case that we studied in regards to the many cultural and ethical considerations um, that are involved in data collection, which also relates to evaluation and can also relate to research generally. Importantly to this effort is looking at what are your standards for your local institutional review boards. The Indian Health Service units often have a process for that type of institutional review. Your tribe, often tribal councils are serving as institutional review boards and give approvals or disapprovals to any type of data collection efforts that may involve, excuse me, that may involve cultural and ethical considerations. Tribal colleges and universities often are a proxy for the tribe itself to conduct institutional review board proceedings around research projects and data collection efforts, and also regional health boards. In my region, it's the Great Plains Tribal Chairman's Health Board. I know other regions of the country have different titles, but they're also a good resource for consulting around IRB type of issues um, that your data collection process may be facing. So those are some of those considerations at the institutional level. And then also looking at these broadly is the sensitivity of the data. Of course, there are additional confidentiality concerns for students and for youth and minors, and the storage becomes an issue. Privacy and the access to that data is an issue, and how does one disseminate information that can be very sensitive. The cultural issues around the intrusiveness or the intrusion of questions in surveys. What questions are you asking about? Are they taboo subjects for the community that you're serving? Are they traumatizing? Are they potentially triggering type of issues? And of course, many of our issues around juvenile justice are embedded with traumatic experiences at the community level and at the individual level. And so that all needs to be considered as you're designing your instruments and your collection plan. Of course, ownership of the data. While this information will be shared or possibly could be shared with your federal partners or say your technical assistance partners like our center, the data is often is considered owned by the tribe itself. And that needs to be explicit as you move forward in your collection. The interpretation of the data, from what worldview is the data being interpreted broadly? We know that the worldview being used by the OJJDP is one of a Western viewpoint with many considerations of tribal cultures and the ethical considerations that we face working and serving tribal communities. And so how can that information be interpreted in your own worldview, and how will it possibly be interpreted from another worldview, from the Western worldview, or even another tribe's worldview? So looking at how to consider these very important cultural and ethical considerations. And for American Indian communities, the division between a cultural consideration and an ethical one is not necessarily an easy distinction to make. So we've combined them together. Okay. Okay, so here we go with our data collection plan template. And this was included in your strategic plan fillable templates. And this would require you to go back and look at some of the presentations and links that are available for download here on in this little chat or this box here on the Adobe Connect seminar room. You will be required to select what type of performance measure you will be measured by through the OJJDP. And then this has some really nice ways of organizing and planning for your data. When you design these in mind with all of you and with all of our various experiences here on staff in working for tribes. You know, among some of the most challenged tribes in the United States is where where I'm coming from. Many of my colleagues are coming from as well. Excuse me. Here's our data collection plan template, and this can be is a fillable document that you can go through and look at what information you need in order to create your planning and to create your instruments or practices for collecting your data information. This template you should have received from your technical assistance coordinators, and you also should have received it through our regular email follow-up after the strategic planning conference in March. If you still haven't received a copy of these fillable templates at this time, please be in touch with your technical assistance coordinator, and he or she will be able to provide that to you immediately. We have fillable templates for every required element of your strat pack that we feel will ease both your submission as well as review. Okay. Moving forward, here we have a checklist, and this is every element that's required, a required deliverable that is to be completed during this first year of planning. And we're here to provide guidance, tools, and resources to complete it. This webinar and the templates are just a few tools that we have offered to you in order to accomplish this. And looking at each of these elements, we have provided a talking circle or several webinars in the case of the Trauma Informed series that will provide you with those resources to complete these different elements and requirements. Courtney, did you want to add anything to the strategic planning checklist?
Not necessarily to the strategic planning template, but just in the spirit of the talking circle and asking some questions and trying to learn from our guests that we have on the line. I posed a question kind of going back to evaluation, back to data collection. You know, what if we are you're doing work with your program, you're doing work within your community, and you know, maybe you identify partners that collect data. You know, they could be tribal partners, they could be non-tribal partners. I'd like to hear from some of the people on the line. How have they worked successfully in building some partnerships to collect data? And if they wouldn't mind sharing some of their experience and stories, I think that would benefit all of us as a group. If anybody has anything that they would like to share. So.
We would definitely love to hear from the tribes who are on the line on some of those questions that Courtney has posed in regards to data collection and your previous experiences with it and what's going on right now with your current program.
And maybe we should start with a basic question of who has had some successful experience in data collection in the past with either this program or previous program efforts that they've been involved with in the past. Who's been oh, like we have some typing and maybe someone willing to unmute and where is
Well, I did see a couple of people starting to type in the chat box. Anna, is that you?
Yeah, I was just going to offer up, I've worked in tribal juvenile justice, and I've also worked in a couple of domestic violence, civil legal support And so I know within that program, I served as legal staff, but of course we had, a coordinator, and we had a victim advocate that worked with us. And I know that we regularly would do an intake, and within that intake we had, a series of questions that we would ask the individual that was coming in. And we used that information that we collected to kind of track, how many incidents of violence had occurred prior to them deciding to come into our program or to ask for help, or, how many times had they returned to the partner that they were with. And so I know that we had discussed briefly about, trying to approach that with sensitivity. And so I know since you're working with youth who may be involved in using substances or, may have experienced trauma, I think when we're working with them, how are we making sure that we're being sensitive to their needs when we are collecting data related to their history or anything that they might have gone through before they came into the court system. That's for anyone that's in Purpose Area 8. As far as diversion, I would think that scenario could come up also in different occasions.
Thank you, Anna. And this is Natalie again, and I have I think it's not an unusual experience, but I came into employment of a tribe and was administering a grant program. And when progress reporting time came, I was very surprised at the information that was being collected by the funding agency. And I hadn't really had much information up front about this. And so it really was about backtracking and looking at, different documents that the program had collected over the time period being reported on. And so obviously in my situation, that particular program, there had been no data collection plan, and thus there was it was difficult to go back and try to create the picture, create the story. And certainly it was a challenge. And I think that it's not unusual for a lot of tribal grantees to have these type of challenges. And we're hoping to circumvent through this webinar and through our technical assistance efforts is helping no tribal program grant manager to be in that situation in the future. And rather having our data collection plan down for the future so that these stories can be told in a good way. And evaluation and the collection of data shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be part of your core planning so that your program activities will yield the information that you need to present to your funder or even to, say, your tribal council or other entities that are looking at the success and the challenges that your TYP or juvenile healing trauma support programs are facing or have faced. Thank you very much to Anna. She is the head of our division for tribal law and policy and is the associate director of our center. And she is an attorney in Oklahoma. Thank you to Courtney Yarhalar, our program manager, who has a master's in social work and is a very experienced technical assistance provider here in our leadership and our management center. Thank you for your input. Thank you very much.
I've also had I posed some more questions in the Q&A box. I didn't know if anybody wanted to respond to any, but one question, what are some challenges that you've encountered in data collection or collecting data, and how did you navigate those challenges? Maybe what are some fears that may be associated with data collection that you are familiar with? I know all of the listeners have great experience working within Indian country, and so again, we're just hoping to support one another in this growth and development. Another question I had is, what are some lessons that you've learned regarding data collection that you wish someone had shared with you? Because that may be helpful with somebody else. So I'd like to, if we can, take a few minutes to allow some thought there, and if anybody would like to respond, we invite you to do so.
Courtney, would you mind reading those questions again? I can't quite pull up the entire text, but I would like to give our participants an opportunity to respond as well.
Great. Well, let's start with the question that I posed last. It was, what are some lessons that you've learned regarding data collection or evaluation that, hey, there it is, that you wish someone had shared with you? So a lesson that you've learned along the way that you wish someone had shared with you.
Hi, this is Erin. I'm one of the TA coordinators. I just joined the call, and I'm sorry if this was discussed earlier, but I think one thing that I learned when early on as a program coordinator or director is that there are some nice assessment tools out there to help you with your data collection. And we at the TA Center are able to provide some information on those specific tools and that take into some cultural consideration. And then, looking to collect data on specific performance measures. We do have some information on those, so feel free to shoot your TA an email or, the general TA Center, and we can help you go down the right path and looking at what type of assessment can help with your data collection for your specific performance measure.
All right. Thank you, Erin. Thank you very much. And so one thing that I heard there, Erin, say is that, we don't often have to reinvent the wheel. Somebody's already thought of that wheel, and so as a TA Center, we can help you identify which wheel it is that might be a good fit for what you're working on, whether that be a data collection tool, a specific tool, or helping work through a process. So again, just kind of posing the questions back to the participants on the line. I'm curious in terms of the strategic planning for this first year of your grant, those of you that are in the first year of the funding cycle for the OJJDP grants. I'm curious, what are some of the performance measures that have been selected and how were they selected? Or if you're kind of still struggling, are there any questions that you have that we might be able to address here? And I'm going to start calling on some names because I could see names.
Courtney, I don't know if I have this functionality from my pod, but can we, or Nicholas, could we open up the performance measures from the TYP planning year? I think it's the first downloadable file. Let's see. I don't know if we're able to do that. But as one of the downloadable, here we go. As one of the downloadable attachments to this presentation, the OJJDP does have a listing of what they're going to be measuring for your planning period. I'm trying to pull up the PDF on my screen.
What is it called again, Natalie?
It's the TYP planning measure, the first document in the pod. Planning year per measure. Okay.
Is that it?
Yes, that is it. Thank you so much, Nicholas. So So these are the type of information or that you're going to be needing to collect through your data collection plan. Um, it's important to note that for the first year, the tribal youth program and the healing to wellness, and correct me if I'm wrong, Anna, but they're the same type of performance measures for your planning period. And that's why you have the same basic outlines for your strat pack. So if you look at all of these various, I think there's, how many are there? There are 5 measures that you will be needing to collect data to report on. And also, is when you go into their system, you're going to have to select what type of program that you're going to be measured as. And of course, your TA coordinator is available to support you in that selection. Are there any questions about this? Again, I would encourage you now during this live webinar to download all of these documents. And if you're not able to do that in time or so forth, we do have them on file and available to all of our grantees that we can simply email back to you. But this is something that is important to consider as you're designing your data collection plan. Nicholas, can you go back to the PowerPoint now? And I think when you, after your planning period, just to note, your Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court program and your Tribal Youth program will begin to differentiate in terms of what output measures are going to be collected by the OJJDP through their system. So I just want to note that the similar, or there's no difference here in the planning period. But once implementation starts and you start reporting on your progress, there will be some different measures because of the, they're very different programs. Okay, so I'd just like to see or go over the strategic planning checklist before we depart here today. I'm so happy that a lot of you were able to join us here this Thursday afternoon. I myself am presenting from the beautiful and sacred Black Hills in South Dakota, and so I thank you for your time here today. And we are invested in your success and the creation of your strat pack for your programs for the tribal youth. Right now, this webinar is looking at the data collection / performance measures plan. Other webinars and information are designed for each of these elements in our checklist. If you have any questions about the checklist, about your progress thus far, please check in with your TA coordinator and feel free to contact anyone at the center to assist you. The downloadable files, which I referred to and brought up a little bit here to review for you. Here's some of them here on this PowerPoint presentation. And again, I would like to note that we can provide you with a copy of this PowerPoint presentation, and sometime soon the audio version will be archived and available for use to you. Here is the performance measures for the planning year, a sample data collection tool that you might want to look at as you're designing your plan and your tools. Here is an evaluation being a finished product of data collection efforts. Here's something from the Center for Disease Control. Here's another evaluation plan, a sample around teen or youth dating violence, also from the Center for Disease Control. And so all of these resources are available to you through the internet, and we can also provide them to you again via email. And if you want to do live reviews of that with your coordinator, please be sure to make that appointment. And I encourage, of course, all of my grantees to contact me directly so I can assist you in this element of your strat pack. The strategic action planning webinars, we did do another series last year on very similar topics, and those audio recordings are available on YouTube on our channel, and they are very useful, and we continue to provide them as resources for this cohort as well. Again, here's another resource on the types of evaluation from the Center for Disease Control. Hi, James Trujillo. Our YouTube channel will be posted. Thank you, Anna, for getting that to James from the La Jolla Band of Indians in Southern California. Welcome, and thank you, James. Are there any other closing comments or questions for us today? I see Anna and Rachel Robles are also typing right now. And we will get to their comments just as soon as possible. Great. Our next talking circle, number 4, will be coming up here on July 20th, 2017, and our topic will be a communications plan. Again, another required element for your Strat Pack submission. And we do want to emphasize that what we are hoping to do is actually inspire a talking circle where we have some conversations around these different topics, and especially as we face a pending submission date for our Strat Pack. If anyone has any other questions or comments, please place them in the chat box. But seeing and hearing none,
Natalie, sorry, I'm going to jump in here real quick. The TA Center, we are very close to rolling out our website, which will have all of the archived webinars on there as well. Last year's as well as the ones that we've done this year, all of the Talking Circle webinars that we've done. And so be looking for that if you are not on the, well, I guess you all are on the newsletter. So be looking for it because the announcements will be going out over the newsletter when our new website is up. And hopefully if things are, if things align, we'll be launching at the end of this week, which I believe is tomorrow. We'll be sending out announcements about it next week, early next week. So be looking for that. And but I just wanted to mention that our new website is coming, and our resources will be there and be easily found. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for announcing that, Courtney. I didn't know whether or not I should, and so thank you very much. As a TA coordinator, I am so excited that our website is coming to fruition. I have expectations that it will not only be useful and resourceful, but it will also be beautiful. So everyone stay tuned for that new development in our offerings. Please do complete the survey in one of the pods here in the seminar room regarding this webinar. We'd love to hear from you and how to improve. And if I were to evaluate our own webinar, I would say not a lot of talking for a talking circle, but we can improve upon that as time goes on. And I also want to note that my elders at the center, my advisors, Dr. Paulette Running Wolf and Etheline Ironcloud Two Dogs are both experts at soliciting a very good talking circle. And so I regret that they couldn't be here with us today. So again, thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions or concerns, place them in your evaluation and feel free to contact me as a presenter. My email is in the box, and also Dr. Running Wolf's contact information, as well as a general center email address for your convenience is available. So please communicate with us, and we look forward to continuing to serve you. Thank you very much.